take your own.
Building notification form up there? On that stack?
I don't know, I didn't see one, but I didn't look for
I think
it.
it's like a sideways.
That's fine.
What is the concept? What are
That's in the first paragraph.
And then,
I'll give you that up, please, just say
did
it.
you guys get a chance to read the FAQs? You're gonna, okay.
Did the owners, did the owners.
If people have questions on Zoom, gosh, I'll just try to remember, yeah, I'll try to check in with you.
Like where I belong, right?
I'll probably get the questions in the room.
If I think that there's something
Or if there's
screwed up,
not.
no, it's a good angle. It's a good angle.
Hey
Other
Mark,
people,
there's
how many people are on Zoom?
FAQ up here if you want it, and there's a copy of the ordinance, but you probably won't look at that. The one on the right is new, the one on that one's the ordinance itself.
Yes,
And
I
then
read something online today.
Yep, and then that's the FAQ.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
that's
That's the old building notification
Oh,
form,
okay, right.
just in case anybody wants to see what used to be, that is no longer.
But typically the thing is either right here or.
I think there are people in the waiting room too, also. Wait, which one's the
But it's notifying me meanwhile, am I right?
What was that? There isn't an existing meeting waiting room that you see, right?
No,
It's still notifying me every time.
Yeah, when you click on participants, it should pull up the, if you click like right on the little icon, there you go. It'll show, yeah,
Town will.
show you who's there and
Groundwater.
if somebody's in the waiting room, it'll say.
Whole construction and installation rules are followed and that the tax burden is fairly distributed among property owners fairly. The fees associated with this will dramatically decrease the amount the town raises through taxation to pay for enforcement.
Want to share, Kim?
So the town doesn't pay
It's
for
too late.
enforcement, the tax. Voting yes, against the regulations, simply a step forward. Voting yes, and no, or just enforces the ordinance that they make.
Okay, it is 5 o'clock, so I'm gonna go ahead
Select board.
and call us to order.
Effectively through taxation. That's 1%.
Okay, alright, so we're going to start with a public hearing on the proposed adoption of the regulatory compliance ordinance. And there are copies of that up here, if you would like to take a look at that. I'm gonna start by reading the rules of public hearings. Most importantly, when you have a question or comment, please state your name and your town of residence. So any person with an interest in the matter may testify in person or in writing. Any material presented to the board as evidence shall become part of the public record and will not be returned. Any person who wishes to speak will be recognized by me and will state his or her name and address. Just town is fine. Any question of the applicant or, well, not applicable here, and members of the board may ask questions at any point during the hearing. Okay, all right, so I'm gonna turn it over to Leanne, who's gonna start with a summary of the ordinance for us.
So if you've got the FAQ in front of you, you can see that this ordinance is in response to the fact that we had a building notification form passed into action by the town meeting in 2004 with a $10 fee attached to it, which was changed to a $100 fee in 2007. And it was inappropriately enacted under the wrong RSA. So even though the townspeople voted for it, most people go to vote and they don't look up the RSAs that enable something, and so they voted because they were in favor of the concept. As it turned out, it was not a legal action. So it became a voluntary form, so the building notification form was voluntary. If anybody wants to see what the old form looked like, there are copies up here. And the select board in the past year repealed the form altogether, and on advice of council, offered to people who had voluntarily paid the $100 building notification form fee in the past 3 years, which is the statute of limitations, that they could have a refund if they requested it. So where we are in town right now is in the position of having very few regulations that govern land use or development. And the enforcement mechanism is the select board. So the planning board approves land use regulations, applications like earth excavation or subdivision. The select board, because you have a separation of powers here, is charged with enforcement. If there's a complaint about the enforcement, the appeal gets made to the ZBA. So the select board is in the position of having no consistent enforcement tool. For the past couple of years, we have hired different individuals to help us get a handle on uses in town that are regulated that we were getting numerous complaints about. One of those was the junkyard question. The other thing that came up was that the town approved a groundwater protection ordinance, and we needed someone to do education with businesses that were over the aquifer to make sure people understood what was covered under the ordinance and what they needed to do if they needed a waiver for their business. So there's precedent that's provided under state statute for the select board to use a variety of tools, including hiring people to do the enforcement. What happens in Tamworth, though, is that because we don't have a required notification system, the way that information comes to us is through complaints. Neighbor complains because something's getting built next door. Somebody's driving by and sees something that they think is not right. An accident happens in somebody's septic that was not regulated, overflows into your well, whatever it is. So we get these kind of vicarious complaints that we have to follow up on. That is required, and we have to go through those steps, but it doesn't feel clean, doesn't feel transparent, doesn't feel consistent. One select board grouping might enforce things a certain way, another select board grouping might enforce things a different way. Some select board might be very proactive, some might ignore things altogether. That is not ultimately legal or useful to the town or fair to taxpayers. So when we had to, and I'm speaking, I'm Leanne Prentice, I am the planning board rep from the select board. So when we, the select board, repealed the building notification form entirely, we had many conversations at select board meetings about what might replace it. Well, the function of the select board is not to create land use regulation. That is the function of the planning boards. Then the planning board started having these conversations, and this is what we've come up with. So this ordinance does not create, and you'll see this as a repeated theme in the FAQ, it does not create any new regulation. It doesn't bring building code to Tamworth. We are not anywhere slipping in a requirement that we're gonna all of a sudden institute state building regulations. This is only requiring that if you have a project that requires any of the things that are listed in the ordinance, that are already regulations on the books in Tamworth, that are already enforceable by the select board, that you get it checked off by one person so that we are noticed that you are doing something appropriately on your land. That does a couple of things. The first thing it does is lets the select board know that, nope, you've got a driveway permit, you should be doing that cut, you're all set. When 3 neighbors come in and say, he just cut down the nicest maple tree that's ever been there, that can't be right. And we say, yes, it's right, they went through all the steps, you're fine. It also lets the assessing office know that there's been a change of value to the property. And you'll see in the FAQ several examples that are real-world examples from our assessing office through our town administrator that show that because of the way assessing is done in Tamworth on a 5-year cycle, if you buy a piece of raw land in year 1 and you build the Taj Mahal on it, and it's down a long driveway so no one sees it from the road and comments on how beautiful the Taj Mahal is, and you don't tell the assessing office that you've just built the Taj Mahal, you're going to keep getting a tax bill for $395 for your 5 acres of land. And you might say, yeah, got away with that for 5 years. I would say that's unethical and not very neighborly, because we have a lot of people in this town who are literally struggling to keep their homes. And we as the select board have to meet with the tax collector and with citizens on a regular basis just to keep people in their homes. And these are people doing everything they can. So you might think, well, my $795 isn't that big a deal. Every dollar is a big deal in Tamworth. So if people go through the steps to notify the town when they're making changes to their property that are under current regulation, not new changes, not adding anything new, then what you're doing is leveling the playing field for everybody. You're cutting down on nuisance reports because we can then say, no, they're completely in compliance. Or we catch something before it happens that could end up costing you as a property owner a lot of money, could cost your neighbors a lot of money if something goes wrong. So that's the thought behind it. The ordinance is not adding new regulation. It adds a required notification mechanism. That's it. People have asked about fees and fines. I will say that on the Tamworth Exchange, Mr. Comeau shared his AI-generated synopsis of the ordinance, which I actually love. The one thing that was a little tricky about it is that so many people focused on the fines. Those fines are already in place. The select board already has access to using those fines as a tool. I've been on the select board now for almost 5 years, and we have never fined somebody because the select board's efforts are to work with people in whatever case it might be finable to avoid that. And we've worked with people for months and months and months at a time to come into compliance and never got to the point of having fines. So yeah, fines are a tool that the select board currently has. This ordinance does not bring those into being. There already are statutorily. So, what else was I saying about fees and fines? Nothing. That's where we are. So we're asking you to help us require, fees, to help us require notification, and the law allows, and it's quoted in the FAQ from the RSA, allows us to charge fees for this process, this permitting process, that are reasonable for the administration of the process. So the old building notification fee was a baseline $100. Didn't matter what you were doing, it was a $100 fee. We haven't created, we being the select board have not created a fee schedule yet, but our conversations have been that, there are some categories that are gonna be passed through and they won't have a fee attached to them at all. There are gonna be some categories that might have a very light fee, because it's really just, if I were the compliance agent, it would be me saying, yep, here it is, their driveway permit's on file, check, you're all set. Taking 15 minutes. Some things like a groundwater protection waiver involves a more complex, like a visit to the property if you've got a business over the aquifer. And so that might be a higher fee. But the fees will be worked out after the ordinance, if the ordinance passes, when the ordinance passes.
Does anyone else from the board want to add any other points before we take questions?
Would it be safe to say that the form that residents will have access to, assuming this is passed, it will sort of clarify for any resident attempting to make a change to their property or an improvement to their property, what items require action on their part. So in other words, rather than having to wade through the regulations, it's sort of it would be clearly summarized that if I'm going to make X change, this is on the checklist, it's very clear what I need to do.
Yeah, and if you look on the FAQ, we included on the back page a section of the letter that went out to all residents a year ago, and that has a sample of the way we were distilling down the subdivision regulations, so that you could see, are you building a house on your land? Well, you don't have to come to the planning board, you bought the land, you build your house, it's fine. It's not under any regulations that we oversee. Oh, you're building a house with a house for your grandchildren on your land? Also, ADU is provided for by the state, you can have two things. Oh, you're building 10 cabins on your land for a short-term rental? Well, that comes to the planning board. So the form itself will have a distillation of if X, then Y. The challenge that's going to be before the planning board and the select board, whether this ordinance passes or not, is re-educating people in town as to what is actually already covered by regulation. And that includes educating local realtors so that they inform people accurately about what is or isn't okay to do on your own. I've been on the planning board now for almost 5 years, and we've never turned down a subdivision application. Like, that's not the point of any of the boards. We work with people to figure out how to make things work so that you can use your property in compliance. All of that's going to be spelled out on the form, which we also haven't drafted yet because there's no sense drafting it if the ordinance doesn't pass.
And then that compliance officer will also be a resource for anyone making an application or who has a question about a project that they're proposing, and in some cases could clarify that no action is required on their behalf. But that individual would be an expert in the regulations that we have on the books and how they would apply to particular projects.
And that would certainly from the perspective of the board, my perspective on the board, that would help, I think, immeasurably in the whole process, both sort of, I think, in a number of ways from our end, but clarify the process, like Ann was asking, for someone to know, do I need to come to the planning board for anything? This will really help clarify that, because there is so much, obviously there's so much confusion in town as to, sometimes thinking that there's no regulations, you can do whatever you want, or not knowing, just not knowing whether or not what you are doing or want to do requires planning board approval. So this is just, I see this as something that would be definitely helpful for anyone sitting on the board here. but anyone in town who wants to do something, isn't sure how to do it, isn't sure what sort of permitting may or may not be required. And it's just that would be helpful. And also from follow-up, I think from our end, there are things that, if this passes and there is a compliance officer, that would take a lot of the burden off of members of the board. There are things that require follow-up from the planning board. Certain things like whether it's conditional approvals or things that are ongoing, like earth excavation situations where there are required follow-ups over the course of the project. So there would be a mechanism for someone to be doing that required follow-up and not be really a burden for someone sitting on this board who has lots of other things and who are working folks, right? This is a volunteer board. So there are a lot of things that, it would make life, I don't want to just say easier for members of the board, but things would be done, I think, much more cleanly, consistently, which I think consistency is something that I think everybody can appreciate more.
Okay, thank you. All right, I'd like to get into questions or comments. If you're on Zoom, you can use the raise hand feature or type a question in the chat and we'll get to you. But just please make sure you state your name and town you're coming from.
I'll start. Yep, so as far as like groundwater, does DES, the state not, Clayton Prill, Tamworth resident, so does the state not already regulate that and oversee that?
Groundwater protection?
Yeah, in regards to septics and everything else?
Yeah, so what happens with septics,
Yep,
somebody puts septic in, it's approved by DES, the town gets a copy of the record.
yep,
So-
you have a plan, yep.
Yep, so that's on file. And this would just be a checkbox saying, yep, the town got this. The copies don't always
Yeah, but you're
come
talking
to
about
us.
failed systems, you're not talking about existing systems, you're talking about somebody's system running over into someone's surface well.
What do you mean?
For instance, if we got a complaint,
Yep.
there was an issue with
Yeah.
the septic system.
Seems like DES would handle that actually, I think, possibly.
What I use that example
We've
as a,
had
as,
complaints go through to DES on ours, and they've kicked it back to the town to come out and check, like, okay, well, they're fine, actually, no, this is,
But as
Yeah.
part of the planning board process, when somebody applies, for instance.
so this
a-
person's gonna be overseeing groundwater protections, septic
Clay,
systems and everything
Clay,
else
no.
No,
in the town? Because that's what it sounds like.
Okay, let me tell you what it's not. What I'm saying is, the ordinance requires that the state process is that DES sends the town copies of the plans. If you're putting in a septic for somebody,
Mm-hmm,
the plan,
do.
a copy of the plan, I'm aware, a
Yep.
copy of the plan goes to the town. So what this person is doing is checking that your new construction has
so
a
what is the
DES,
compliance officer doing?
checking that the DES approved.
So what is he doing with failed systems?
Nothing.
Okay, so then why are we presenting that as an example of what he would be
The
doing
example
in order
is-
to prevent this from
The
happening in
example
the
is,
future?
some people are putting in septics on their own that are not approved. And the potential,
They were
is,
put in many years ago and they've just been limped along?
perhaps that too.
Yeah.
So if we don't have septics on file for every place in town right now.
I know, we've pulled up roads along here where there's not septic plans
Yeah.
for any of those properties. And these aren't just like shotgun shacks out in the woods.
Yeah. So we'd like to avoid doing that going forward.
So how are you gonna manage that if you don't have a septic on file for that property?
I guess I don't understand what your question is.
So our compliance officer would probably, hypothetically, contact the property owner, because this is all engagement with the property owner, and say, Mr. Prill, we see that you just you're building a house, but we don't have a septic plan on file, and you're like, oh yeah, I'm gonna call my guy and make sure it gets to you.
In the case of like, we don't have a plan on file, but your house has been here for the last 150
That's
years.
not-
Those are two different things. There's a new house, a
Yep.
new septic.
So
Yeah.
this
Yeah,
isn't
I-
retroactive, you're not like,
I'm-
anyone that's got something going ahead,
With all
that doesn't matter.
I'm sorry, respectfully, if you ask a question and it's being answered, would you please allow someone to answer the
Sir,
question?
go ahead.
So, you seem to be asking about new septics versus septics that, I mean, my house,
I'm talking about the example, sorry, of the failed system, like running over into someone's well. So not a new system.
Please let him answer.
yeah, so what, I guess, and also like, what are you driving at? What is your question?
That's
And
your
you also
question.
said groundwater. When we talk groundwater, generally this board, it's groundwater, there's a groundwater protection ordinance.
Right.
Which is not, doesn't regulate residential septic systems. So that's not the same thing.
Okay, but there was an example put forth where someone's well or septic was running over into someone's well. That's what I'm speaking to specifically. Is it something that this
I believe
compliance
the-
officer would be dealing with? Sorry, respectfully, let me
You're right,
finish, please.
absolutely.
So, and how is this officer affecting that process versus going through DES or the state who actually regulates this? You guys have no
The town
authority
goes,
in this.
for that example, my use of that example, because I gave the example, my
Yep.
use of that example was if somebody's putting in a system fly by night and there's no oversight or regulation to people doing new construction that's not being held up to the regulations we have. Obviously, if somebody's got a failed system, if my system fails tomorrow and it runs down into Pete Hansen's well, DES handles that. That's not under the town's purview, as you well know. We're not, there's nothing in this ordinance that suggests that it is.
So the compliance officer's not involved in that case, if you have something on file?
No, the compliance officer is gonna be responsible for the existing regulations the town has and checking that state requirements are fulfilled. So we're supposed to have a copy of a state-approved septic system on file.
Yep.
If we don't have it, that person will go for it. If my septic fails, that's not the compliance officer's job. Two different things.
True. And there's a lot of houses around there that have had septics for many years that are not in the DES system. So,
This
which
person,
I came after the groundwater. So,
Perfectly legal. As long as the septic is not in failure, then I don't see what issue the town or the state has.
And then it comes up if when it's being replaced or repaired or whatever, that's when it's brought up. And then we would get a plan, a new plan on file, I'm guessing.
Or in the
Yeah.
instance of a new build or change that would require that project to come before a board for approval, that requires evidence of an approved septic system. So if that's on our checklist for a project that is coming
Like a
before,
subdivision.
like a subdivision, requires that we have a approved septic system for the proposed project. If we don't have that, that would be followed up on by the ordinance officer, or we wouldn't be approving the project, we would be asking for that to be provided.
Okay.
We're not going out running around town, knocking on people's doors saying, do you have an approved septic system? We're talking about new applications or anything that is already in existence in our regulation that
So you're keeping a
requires-
file just to satisfy complaints. Like if complaints come in, it's like, well, they have it on file, so there's nothing we can do about it. Same goes with like a driveway permit.
Exactly, in many cases, it's going to avoid situations that could otherwise be confusing, because we have the checklist, it's going to be there, we'll have the information. It's going to help people to do what the regulation requires them to do in an orderly fashion.
Okay,
Thank you. I'm gonna.
I'll be back. Go ahead.
So Emily Nolan, Tamworth. So if I have a 2-acre parcel and my dream is to put 10 tiny homes on it, and I have to go through the subdivision application process, is looking at septic load, my slope and grade of my land, and what my capacity is. Is that something that the planning board looks at as part of the subdivision application?
Yes.
Okay, so
Currently.
that's connecting the pieces between this code compliance officer, making sure that that happens with a subdivision regulation. Okay.
Thank you, ma'am. Andrew Moore in Tamworth. Regarding the compliance officer position, from my understanding, this is a position that would need to be created. Is that correct?
Partially.
Partially.
So we've had compliance agents in the past, hired for specific ordinances or regulations. So there's no job description for this position, but we would create one.
Now, would the idea, assuming this passes, for this position to be a full-time position with benefits paid into the retirement system? That
I
would be-
can't imagine. We've looked at the number of, when the building notification form was voluntary, the number of applications that came through the office was,
We had on average about 80 a year.
so that's not even half-time.
Okay. Awesome. May I ask one more? Thank you. Just, I was looking at the form here, the one that.
The letter part?
The letter part. So just wanted to make sure I'm on the same page. If I understood what you were saying, Ryan, earlier, that if you were building a house on a undeveloped land or you bought a plot, that's something that would go with the planning board. Did I understand you correctly? Okay. But then, just what confuses me, looking at the ordinance, this is something along the lines of, let's say someone's doing a remodel that costs more than $5,000 in materials. Let's say for me, if I'm remodeling my living room or a bedroom or something, and that was, I buy over $5,000 worth of material at Home Depot, that is something I would have to submit. Am I understanding that correctly?
It's labor and materials.
Yeah.
So the ordinance covers things that were covered in the building notification form, and not everything on the building notification form needed to come before the planning board.
Sure.
So it's not complete overlap. The compliance officer is looking at more than what the planning board would look at.
I see. Thank you.
So just to be clear though, that if you were remodeling your kitchen and it was costing more than $5,000 for materials, the code compliance officer isn't gonna come into your house and see that things are to some building code. That's not, because we don't have building code.
Right.
Yeah, the notification of changes to your property around dollar amounts is a green flag to the assessor.
Sure.
To let the assessor know that you've made a change so that he can contact you about when your project is done.
Yes, someone we're asking
Reassessing.
for permission is more of, hey, I'm doing this.
Exactly,
There you go. Okay,
yeah.
thank you, I appreciate that.
Do I have any questions from anyone on Zoom?
Nobody has.
Oh, somebody
Okay.
else?
Okay.
Yes.
Go ahead and unmute if you'd like.
I think it's Laura.
Oh,
You're still muted, Laura.
Microphone may not be connected.
Or maybe,
Or
can you
audio.
turn the volume up on the TV now?
Hang on a second.
Oh, no?
No. Hang on, let's,
Where's their TV remote?
She's got it.
Yes.
I think it may be on her.
Did you type your question in?
I think she's typing it
She's
now.
typing it.
Okay.
And who was that?
Laura Pike. Can you read the question, because I can't.
That's from Laura Pike in Tamworth. She says, thanks,
Oh,
because I was
Still
looking for it, but also she's typing. She's been here 35 years and this is long overdue.
Yes, I met her on Facebook. I know, nice to meet you.
I don't know how many of you have checked out the build-out analysis that we had done a couple of years ago, but if you haven't, you should look at that. Tamworth is going to change a lot in the next 30 years,
And what we're trying to do is avoid dealing with things retroactively. We'd rather see what's gonna happen now than deal with something 10 years from now that it wasn't done right.
So, can I ask that question?
Please.
Sorry, Andrea from Tamworth.
Yep, good.
So, I guess my question is, in the case of, like, if you are improving your home or you're remodeling your home, you're adding an addition, and the purpose of applying for it is for tax purposes, so that the assessor can increase the property taxes.
Mhm.
What is that? It seems like that has nothing to do with the safety compliance officer. It seems like that's, if he's not coming in and inspecting it, to make sure that you're being honest and using the right amount, all of that, what is his purpose? That sounds like just middleman work.
It is middleman work, so that, so for that example, the way that we do assessing in Tamworth is on a 5-year cycle. And in that 5-year rotation, the assessor will come to your property and look at your property and make notes and take pictures, and it becomes part of your file that you can see on record. So you can, I'll use my house as an example. I lived in an old house, we renovated it, tore the thing down, rebuilt it, and notified the assessor, and he came out and said, great, when it's finished, I'll come back and look at the whole thing. A lot of people don't tell us that, and we have people, as I said before, who go from raw land to a business, a functioning business, and they've only been paying taxes on raw land, and that's unethical. So that's what the point is. So the compliance guy's not going to come out to your house. That's not his job. So if you let him or her know that you're putting an addition on your house, all he's going to do is make note of it and pass it on to the assessor.
But that's my point, is like, I guess the overarching thing I'm trying to say, and I'll speak to that, but is like, it still seems fuzzy and not well defined. So in other words, like, okay, you need to now tell him, who now informs someone else. Why can't you just go directly to whatever office it is that you go to and say, okay, I'm investing 20 grand on a thing?
That's a great question. And honestly, that might happen. We might say that the required notification is in 2 prongs. One is for the code compliance person, and if it's the assessing, it goes right to the assessor. That hasn't been worked out yet. But right now, we don't have a required notification, and the ordinance is about required notification. So how we create that, you might be right that we cut out the middleman. I don't know. The assessor's only here once a month.
Yeah, I will say how the old building notification form worked was they'd come in, anything that said 2 or more of anything was just kind of our red flag to make a copy of that form, put it in the planning board's inbox so that they could then follow up, because it might fall within your subdivision regulations. But other than that, it, was a building permit goes into our assessing database.
Okay. So I guess, like, my question there is, it seems like some of the stuff maybe needs to be hammered out so people know exactly what I think people are right to be a little bit reluctant when it's still somewhat vague how it's all going to be written up. So you're voting for the officer, and then afterwards everyone decides, or does that stuff all get hammered out before
You're not
the
voting.
officer?
There's no officer in the ordinance.
No, but isn't that what this is about?
No, the ordinance is a required compliance. The ordinance is creating a mechanism that requires that you tell the town. So it could be we don't hire somebody. The select board could say, we're going to do this ourselves. You're still required to tell the select board. Or we could make the town administrator our agent. The select board has the right to appoint its own agent. I'm using the compliance example, the agent example, because with a volunteer board, that's likely where we'll go, and that's where we've been going. The ordinance itself doesn't put the position in place, because the position's already in place. We've had a position for 3 years now. Mm-hmm. What the ordinance does is creates a mechanism that says, if you're doing X, Y, or Z, as outlined in the ordinance, you have to tell the town. And what we'll create afterwards if it passes, is what does that form look like? We have the old building notification form. It'll probably look like a much cleaner, trimmed down version of that. And whether that building notification form goes to a compliance agent that we hire, or it goes directly into the assessor's box, we don't know yet. But the point is, what we're asking the town to do is say, we understand the merit of requiring that people let us know if they're doing something that connects to one of our regulations.
Yeah.
And if you're not doing something that connects to a regulation, we don't need to know.
Yeah, but I mean, I guess like, sorry, can I ask
Yep,
a follow-up?
go
Okay. Like the remodeling, the 5,000, I just feel like for people, that's such a low threshold where you have to tell people what you're doing in your home. Like $5,000 is almost nothing for any kind of remodel thing. So I just feel like for most people, the reason we avoid doing it is precisely because they already pay a tremendous amount in property taxes, and now they're gonna be penalized for investing money in their home further, where they're gonna continue to pay for that. So I'm saying, I guess what I'm saying is, like, I understand that that's the way the ordinances are now, but it seems like the fact that it hasn't been enforced and that people appreciate that it hasn't been enforced means that maybe it would behoove the town to look back at rescinding ordinances like that, because that's part of what makes living in Tamworth nice, is that you can renovate your home without a penalty, which is what an assessment and an increase is. So I feel like there would be, I would feel better if there was more of a conversation around doing that than trying to make sure that this is, like, kind of hitting the bullseye on the wrong target by saying, oh, we have these ordinances and people have been getting away with stuff for the most part, so we should make sure it's enforced, as opposed to, should we have this ordinance at all? Should we have these regulations in place at all in the first place? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's I hear you, and that's a conversation that is, I think, different from this, for a lot of reasons. I mean, because this hearing has to be about this one thing, because it's a notice hearing.
And truthfully, I mean, I think
Yeah.
they're, I guess, to not go too far down the rabbit hole. One of the things that I think this would do is to, which Leanne has mentioned, but it will make, it'll level the playing field in a lot of ways. We pay, I mean, I feel like I complain all the time when I get a tax bill in town here. I think we pay a lot of taxes. What this will help do is to make sure that people are paying their fair share and not paying more than their fair share. Because if there are places that have improved the property significantly without being assessed to what it should be, it means that those of us, you and I, who are paying we're paying our taxes based upon whatever the taxation across town. If people who are not paying their fair share because the town doesn't know that, hey, you've built an extra 4 cabins on your property, well, by having that follow-up and making sure that these properties are being assessed as they should be, it's actually going to lower the tax rate for everybody across town, because there's tax revenue that should be coming in actually coming in. And so that means that those of us who are paying properly don't have to pay for other people who aren't paying their fair share.
Yeah, I guess.
If that makes sense.
I see what you're saying, I guess, and I won't.
Ian Prill,
The rest.
Tamworth.
Oh, shit.
She's still talking.
Go ahead. Do fit.
So I guess like my general response to that, and I understand when you just stick to the matter at hand, is it doesn't necessarily correlate that taxes will go down if people pay more, and other people paying more doesn't necessarily mean I pay less. Like, I would like to see the tax rate just generally lowered to make Tamworth more affordable for everybody. Someone building the Taj Mahal and getting taxed more, I'm not sure. There isn't necessarily a correlation between that and then everyone's property rate going down. The selectmen board might not vote to lower the property rate, it might choose to spend the money on more things, so, sorry, that's all I have to say, sorry. Go ahead, Ann.
We did have a comment on Zoom I'm gonna get to first.
Yeah. She would like to say it, and I think if her camera and her microphone work,
Yep.
we should do that. Becky, are you able to make it?
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay, I'm gonna say that
Why don't you
this
say your
form
name
remains-
first? Why don't you say your name and your town?
Becky Mason, Tamworth, New Hampshire. This form, I look at it as a multi-use form. If you're going to build a garage that will affect the groundwater, then the form would be forwarded not only to the planning board, but the compliance officer who oversees groundwater protection. If you're remodeling your bathroom, and it's gonna be over $5,000, the form would be forwarded to the assessor. Many, many years ago, we had such a form in town that was called an inventory, and you had to inventory everything new that you had done to your house in the last year so that the assessing could be done appropriately. If you've got a failed septic system and you're redoing your septic system, not only is DES involved, but then the health officer would become involved to make sure that you've got a properly publicly functioning septic system. So to me, this is a multi-purpose form. We've had the building notification form, it just was not used, so that compliance is not necessarily the whole force of this form. It will probably be settled out to those people who need to know the information, plus the original copy with the planning board. That's all I got.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any response to that?
No.
There was a, I think
Ian.
someone in the corner here had their hand
Hold it for a
up.
while.
You ready to go eat supper, dear?
Becky, you're still on.
Very able to be heard. That's great.
That could have been worse.
Go Ian.
Ian Prill, Tamworth, New Hampshire. So my understanding is if we vote this through, our taxes will go down. Is that the argument you're making?
I'm not, I didn't, I don't think I said that. I think that,
I mean, I heard it. Maybe nobody else.
well, I
Well,
mean,
then it's possible.
if every, yeah, I think we're.
Can I speak to that?
Please.
If the valuation goes up, right, if everybody's assessed fairly and their values go up, then yes, the amount we collect on the budget stays the same, right? That isn't affected, but everybody's paying more so that it would reduce.
So I'm still paying the same.
This would be the 5-year cycle.
I'm not paying, like, I'm not paying any less.
As we know,
There's
that
just more people paying
If
more.
the tax rate goes down, then you're gonna
Pay
pay
less.
less. That's the way that works.
so the tax rate changes based on the budget of the town. We can't
Basically.
predict what that will be a year from now, 5 years from now, 10 years from now,
No, it's tough.
right? But what we can say is that your taxes will be
It-
assessed more fairly.
It
To
seems,
all
it seems like
residents.
there's more work going into it, so that would cause more cost, obviously.
Well, right now, the compliance agents that we've been hiring have been paid for through the town budget, completely through taxation. So theoretically, it would cost less because there would be fees associated with this application process that would cover that cost. So it would not be raised through taxes, theoretically.
Theoretically.
Yep.
But it would be costing us money to have this go out, so.
Costing
I mean,
money right now, man, 14 grand last year.
What would be, I mean, what's the benefit? Like, how much more, or how much less would we be paying in tax, or how much more would we have to pay for somebody who's doing such actions as keeping an eye on such things? Now that we have, I mean, obviously we have a board of volunteers here, we pay them nothing. And it seems like we're getting by just fine.
We could try and get volunteers that are willing to enforce things and work for these enforcing bodies and then drive around in their cars for free, maybe.
Yeah, you can really up your
Yeah.
enforcement there. You can really weaponize
Yeah,
it.
yeah.
It would be great, wouldn't it?
I think right now it makes sense to outsource that.
Yeah, well, I feel like,
Making it more consistent.
like, as Andy had said, we already pay a lot in taxes, like, some of the highest around. And, you know, one of the benefits that has always been about living in Tamworth is that you have a freedom on your property to build as you may. So I mean, what does this entail? Like, if you're gonna build a building, an outbuilding for animals, is this included?
Is that under regulation right now? Answer is no. It's only the things that are under regulation right now. Earth excavation, subdivision, there are things listed right there.
Yeah,
You're
I
gonna
mean,
put a
well,
gra-
when you're talking about groundwater, like, what's the difference between building a 30 by 24 garage compared to building a 30 by 24 outbuilding for your animals?
But neither one of those comes under scrutiny.
Unless you're, I mean, if you're a commercial business over the aquifer and you're doing some manner of development on your property, then you probably have to come to us for groundwater permit, right? But if you're not, if it's at your house and you're building a barn, you don't come to this board.
You don't go to any board.
You just file your form and.
Yeah.
Yeah, that doesn't, nothing
Yeah, well, I
changes.
feel like
There's no exclusions.
Yeah, no, there's no exclusions in this regulatory compliance ordinance.
I think the exclusions are if they don't qualify under what's
Under
listed,
regulation,
then they're
then
excluded.
we're not
But
looking
it's,
at it.
it's very vague.
Yeah, it seems very vague, it's very confusing, especially for us who do have animals and we do build outbuildings often.
Well, I think that, what's important to remember is we're not adding any regulations, it's just an enforcement mechanism. So it's everything you're allowed to do right now, you're still allowed to do. You just, now things that have always been covered by, traditionally the building notification form are being covered under this so that everyone is being assessed fairly. And, I wish we could speak to how much, if any, people's taxes will go down or how much is this gonna cost, but we don't know exactly because we don't know exactly what it's gonna look like. We're just creating the enforcement mechanism. But we are saying it's a possibility that taxes will go down because right now, there are many properties in town that are being under-assessed. And they're paying less than their fair share. And the rest of us are paying to make up for that. Yes.
So Adam Cunningham, Tamworth. Kind of two-part question here. Number one, the $5,000, is that statutory or is that something the town has decided?
That
For
was in the
improvements.
original building notification form.
Okay, because to speak to the example of renovating your living room, if you tear out your living room carpet and put it in from Home Depot, you're at $5,000 of labor. And so then my next question for the board is, do you believe that, even though it's now mandatory to notify the town, that that's actually going to occur in that circumstance?
Of course not.
Okay,
But part of the job, as I said earlier, of the select board and the planning board and the town office and the assessor is going to be to educate so that the compliance will be greater than it is now, and anything's better than what it is now.
So,
From my seat.
So then my next part of my question is the, if the goal is to grant, or to get people to come into compliance with these things, then it seems to me like we're not just talking about an ordinance, you are actually talking about a person here. So I know these issues are bifurcated somewhat, but it does no good to have a form that's mandatory versus a form that's voluntary without putting an enforcement body behind that. And then to put an enforcement body behind that, you have to give them the ability to leave the office. So then you're going to be talking about some sort of transportation. We're going to be talking about salary. We're going to be talking about what happens when they get injured on the job, workman's comp issues. This in no way is going to be a beneficial to the taxpayers by increasing the town's liability and exposure here. And ultimately, you're still not going to get the compliance, because if we're aware of all these people building all these things around here, why haven't we sent the assessor out to reassess their properties? Spend the money towards the assessor, get the assessor. Maybe we move off of a 5-year cycle and we go to a 3-year cycle for assessments where the assessor's out more visible and actually takes a look at it. Because if it's truly about taxpayers' money, let's not spend more of it. Let's reduce our town budget and fix the processes we already have in place.
Can I make a comment to the 5-year cycle? That's not just Tamworth, that's statewide.
Yeah.
And it's a reevaluation process. So I just want to clarify that to let you know it's not strictly for Tamworth. The DRA can make you do it earlier if your net assessment value of your town is not within that market value or within a certain equalization ratio percentage.
Well, can I also say that Leanne noted, we've budgeted solely in taxes for this position for the last 3 years. Adopting this ordinance is what allows us to collect a fee from the user. So if I am building something on the aquifer, if I am putting 10 cabins on my property and now I know that I need to go through the subdivision regulation process, that's the fee that now our office can charge to offset the cost of the person.
Has the town done a cost analysis on this? Do we have rough preliminary numbers that we can take a look at?
When I've talked with other towns and how they structure their fees for their building permit, because that's kind of the closest thing that looks like this, a lot of building inspectors are only paid through what they also collect in the fee for whatever they have to follow up on, which is why, we estimate this to be a minimal, because there's only really 3 ordinances that this compliance officer would have to follow up on. Like you said, building a deck wouldn't need anything, re-siding your house wouldn't need any follow-up, but floodplain, subdivision, groundwater protection, all of those would need follow-up. They would really only be being paid for that type of regulation. Does that make sense?
No. So I think what I would respectfully ask the town to do is to pull together some preliminary numbers and actually put numbers before the taxpayers to say this is what we think this impact is going to be, not vague. And yes, there are a lot of caveats out there. However, there is a lot of data that we can use. Are we talking about there's 100 residences out there that need to be reassessed? Are we talking about 10? Are we talking about a $10,000 project? Are we talking about $400,000 projects? I think it behooves the taxpayers to know exactly what it is we're trying to accomplish here. I mean, you said there were 80 building notifications last year.
Yeah, so that's like a good kind of base number to know that.
So what do we actually think is occurring outside of those building notifications?
I mean, it's hard to know. That's one of the problems in Tamworth, is, when it's voluntary and you're not required to notify, those are 80 people that, our office gets a lot of calls, mostly from people out of town saying, I just moved here, I'm doing an addition, what do I need to do? How do I get a building permit? And then we have to explain, well, we don't actually have a building department. We have a building notification form, it's voluntary, it's...
I can tell you, I filled 2 of those out in my time being here, and I was never told it was voluntary, and the town very happily cashed my check.
Were you ever refunded?
No.
Were you ever notified that
Nope.
you were due a refund?
No, I was not.
Depends on if you're in that 3-year period.
Yeah.
So, and to, if I may just chime in, as Larry mentioned, which I think is very important, part of this is not just going to chase after people who are non-compliant right now. I think a lot of it is setting up a framework for moving forward. It's streamlining the entire process moving forward, so that you just moved to town, you don't know what the process is. I can't tell you how many times people are asking, I want to do this to my property, what do I need to do? Do I need permits? What kind of permit do I need? Well, here you go. There's going to be a clearly defined process. So there will be less and less that the town has to do to bring things into compliance.
So,
Meaning like things, I'm sorry, so that people will know with much greater clarity what they need to do, so that they follow the rules and everything's fine. No one has to go chasing anybody. So I think that's something that's very important.
yeah, so I guess my question there is, to his point, why is that not in place already? Like, what is this doing that does more of that? Like, it's adding something instead of maybe just making things clear doesn't necessarily require an ordinance. If you did that,
Yeah.
maybe you can translate what I said. I don't know. know if I'm saying it clearly. Like in other words, like if it's like people don't know, well, that isn't because if there are ordinances and regulations on file, then it seems like that's a problem of communication, not lack of enforcement. Is that?
I think probably enforcement, communication, education. I think that's a great point. I think all of these things tied together, that's part of what this does, is going to, this, why aren't we doing this already? Well, this is enabling us to do this now. We realize that there needs to be a process in place, and there isn't now. This gives it to us. So that's really what it is. It's now, this allows us to clarify things moving forward in a way that we just don't have the ability.
And the reason that it was voluntary only before was because of an error with the vote.
I'm gonna take a question over here.
Just to make a few points, because I've listened to everybody,
Name, Mark.
Oh, Mark Debatetto, Tamworth resident. So, since I got involved going to a lot of meetings, different parts of the operations of the town, the select board, and everybody, I think, has done a real good job. So you're all concerned about money, some more than others. I'm very concerned about money, and the select board has done a very good job of containing costs in the town, from what I've seen for the last couple, 3 years. Okay, so I go to the meetings, I read meeting minutes, so I know what's going on, and to lessen the cost of things, especially where the cost of what is needed to run a town have gone up, and still come back at a negative percentage of what it was last year, is really a great thing. Now, the town budget isn't the only budget in town. You realize that. What's the next most costly budget that has to be attended to? That's right. So, what they're trying to do with this ordinance right now, I think, this is how I feel. I built a home here. I was lucky, I had a great builder, and he dots his I's and crosses his T's. There was the notification form when I built my house. We gotta go, we gotta let them know what we're doing. Okay, great. Your septic, it might fly, it might not. We were gonna try to have it fly. It didn't fly, it was leaking, it was an old one, right? From the 50s. Now, I had to call the local septic design guy from the state, and he looks at slopes, he looks at, permeability of the ground, where it's all gonna flow, and he designs a septic, okay? When I was building my house, my builder says, because I asked him, what about code enforcement for electrical, plumbing, structure, the whole thing? He says, they don't have that here, but we go by state and national standards, okay? Now, somebody might put an addition on their house and wire it however they want. And I've seen it all, man. I've seen power running over the ground, wrapped around trees, stretched and just causing fires, where I used to work locally. And so that part, they're not regulating. They're not gonna regulate any code as far as plumbing, electrical, what kind of roof you put on, what kind of siding you put on, how you insulate it, right? How you heat it, how you vent your fireplace so you're, any heat, right? That's all on you. But when it comes to, and I get it, because the town needs money to run, is if you're gonna improve your property, matter of fact, I just had a real estate agent come out and give me what my house is valued in his eye as far as compared to other homes in the area. And it's pretty close. I wasn't happy. I was hoping my house would be worth about $100,000, but it's not the case. So what they're trying to do is be notified. Number one, if somebody's gonna build a subdivision, now listen, down on Route 25, somebody built a private trailer park down there. When that first happened, I was like, I managed a campground on a lake. I'm like, the river's right there, you know, I wonder if they're aware of this and the whole thing, and whatever happened, I don't know. But if you're improving your property, it's gonna increase the value of your property, you're gonna be taxed. That's just the way it is, until we come up with some other way to get money for the town, right? My thing is this, they're not trying to create a lot more cost. And believe me, if they try to create more cost, am I gonna be happy? Right, so the thing is that if somebody puts an addition behind their house and they don't let us know about it, and they get away with it, but this is supposed to just try to keep honest people honest. Listen, I'm gonna build something. I'm building my personal garage. Whether I house animals, whatever, I'm gonna let them know that I'm building it.
You don't have to,
Huh?
you don't have to.
I do, because I don't want my neighbors coming by and saying, listen, there's
Why not? He's choosing to.
there's this guy doing this, and,
Well, I'm not.
well, listen, you can do what you want, what I'm saying is, but what
And
they're
I don't
trying
want
to do,
somebody to
Okay,
come on my
okay.
property
Wait,
that
wait.
has no business being there.
nobody has to go on your property.
Okay,
What
hold
sounds
on,
like-
hold on. We need to have order, and there are other people who have had their hands raised to ask questions, so I'm gonna
I've
ask us
asked,
to stay
and
on
I've
topic.
turned-
There
I've
are
looked
people who have
past.
been waiting since before you.
Can I
Yep.
just address, Forrest had a question about process.
Yes.
Can I answer
Yeah.
that question?
And then we're gonna get to Laura's question.
Yeah. So the process is that tonight, the planning board, at the end, once the hearing is closed, takes a vote to put this on the town warrant. The ordinance goes to the town as a ballot measure. So in March, on election day, you'll go in and vote for whoever's running for whatever, and there will be this ballot measure saying, are you in favor, I don't remember how it's worded, of blah, 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 yes or no. This has to be approved by the town. The planning board does not approve this and put it into effect, which is why we have the public hearing. You've all got to say your pieces about it, which is the point of it. You've brought up some, suggestions or some questions for clarity. And our job is, between now and town meeting, to get some more information, to get some data points, to do some research, and to do some education, and to put our best effort to share this, the reasons why we feel that we need this ordinance in town. It's up to the voters. And if the voters choose not to have this, then they don't have it. And then it comes back to the select board to say, okay, so we don't have this required mechanism. How do we go about enforcing? Do we just let it all go and ignore everything? Kumbaya, do whatever? Or do we have to, hire somebody anyway? We have options. We already have statutory rights to do that and responsibilities to enforce regulations that we have. If the town chooses to, deal with regulations in a different way, that's a conversation for a different day. The ordinance gets voted on by us to be put on the warrant tonight, and then it goes to the town. So you can all come on election day and have your say.
Okay, Laura has had a question for a while, so I'm gonna take that.
Let me try this again. Hi,
Oh,
Laura.
yeah,
Thank
that
you.
works.
There we go.
Okay, yep.
Perfect, thank you. Sorry about that. So I have a couple short comments, and then a couple short comments. So, for the remodeling, the $5,000 amount, it might be helpful if folks understood how you came to that number, because I can certainly see with inflation and the cost of materials these days that why that would be, maybe that number particularly would be a flag. So that's just an observation. The second thing, I think, in explaining the compliance officer, that if I think about it this way, it makes it easier for me. I don't see it as a full-time job on payroll and with all this risk to the town, because I think of it as a per diem, right? So if you're going to have to engage these services, they're on a per diem, and then as you've said, the fees will offset that expense. And then my final point is bravo to the earlier comment around the budgets in the town. I would just like to also stress that there is a school budget. The school budget is the largest impact on our taxes and always has been. So I would say that I certainly hope the people that are having, that are passionate about this issue and the work that these boards are doing are as passionately engaged in scrutinizing what's being what's on the school budget for this year. Because that's really where we can make a significant impact is by bringing the cost of our school down, and there are a lot of smart ways to do that. So again, I would say thank you to both of the boards, Select and Planning, for this work, and I appreciate you taking our time and or giving us your time and taking our comments, and that's it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Laura. Okay, who has questions?
Well, I don't have a question, I'd like to speak.
Okay.
Jeremy Tatro, Tamworth. I understand the ordinance and the particularities of what you guys have discussed, but I'm in the trades and I've been doing it for a long time as well, but I guess my only advice would be like, there's a lot of devious people out there, and I think even if you do enforce this, there's gonna be more people than you think that aren't gonna just tell you. They're just not gonna. So I don't think it's really gonna benefit that much, because unfortunately in society and the way people are, there's a lot of devious individuals out there that aren't gonna come with your compliance. They're just gonna do what they're gonna do anyways. So I don't believe this regulation, this compliance, really is gonna be that much more beneficial. You know, I mean, the honest people will be honest, you know, I'm an honest guy, of course. But there's gonna be the devious people, and they're not gonna tell you guys, they're not gonna fill out the paperwork, they're not gonna continue with their forms. So we're all gonna continue to just go around in circles on this. So that's my input on it. It's just, you know, I've seen it hundreds of times before, and I don't think an ordinance is really gonna defer them from being the way they are. So that's my opinion on this tonight.
Thank you.
Will Robinson, Tamworth. I just have two quick questions. One would be, will it be retroactive at all? Would this compliance officer be looking for people that are out of compliance from projects that are already completed? And then just a little bit more information on a fee schedule. That's it.
So the retroactive question, we're still working with legal on that. So the short answer is no, it shouldn't be retroactive, based on what he said.
Okay.
What information do you want on the fee schedule?
I mean, just ballpark. Like, what are you guys thinking?
Ballpark, ballpark is, if you look at Sandwich and the way that they've got things broken down, we've looked at that as an example rather, and I'm not saying that we're gonna have building, driveway permit is the same as, I'm not saying that we're gonna copy it, but the way that they choose, different fees that are based on basically the time that the person who is going through the application has to spend on it.
Okay.
So the fee should be concurrent, which is why some fees, some actions won't have a fee at all, because it's really gonna be a matter of that person, the enforcement person, looking to see if there's a driveway permit in the file. There is, check the box. And I say don't hold it against me if we charge you for a driveway permit, I don't know, I'm just giving you an example.
No, just curious.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Alright, any other quick questions or comments? We do have more on our agenda to get to, and we've been here for over an hour, but,
Can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
oh, yep, go ahead.
I'd like to ask a question or two. Going back to, I think we were talking about like exemptions for agricultural buildings. Will that be a thing?
Okay, so that was a misunderstanding. Let me be clear, Ian. There's no exemption for anything. What we're saying is the type of construction that you do in a dwelling on your property is not regulated by our regulations. The cost of a project is what's gonna trigger the requirement for notification. So whether it's a barn for your cows, we don't care if you build a barn for your cows or a barn for your kid, it doesn't matter to us, it's the money amount that's gonna trigger it. And that trigger, theoretically, doesn't have anybody going to your property because you're just letting us know so that when the assessor comes in and checks his box, he knows that you've just built a $400,000 barn. Wouldn't that be nice?
So what is that number?
What is, right now, the number's in the ordinance is 5,000.
So if you, just to clarify, if you build an outbuilding and it costs you more than $5,000, it's not, like, you will be under the scope of the compliance officer.
You will be, we will notify, the compliance officer will notify the assessor.
So if we have an outdoor building for our animals and it costs us more than $5,000, which doesn't take much.
Yep.
For greenhouse, for instance.
A chicken house.
Well over that.
Yep.
We have to notify the compliance officer for that.
Well, it's required notification with the form, right? Like, compliance officer might not follow up, but.
And right now that form's voluntary.
There is no form right now.
And just to come back around, now that I have the floor. So, obviously a big complaint, especially from the board, is that this is taking up your time, a lot of confusion, and it's kind of come to be that you need to do something more about it. Perhaps just an FAQ sheet would be enough. So when somebody calls in, you can reference them to that, and that seems like that would cost almost no money. And it would explain everything.
It would be an
Similar
excellent.
to an FAQ sheet we got tonight.
Yep.
Simple.
Yeah, and we did, I mean, as far as the planning board is concerned, we did something like that.
With the before you build.
Yeah.
You could flesh that out and do it more often.
Yeah, but I think something, and again, like if that
I feel like that's a
works.
simple solution, like, nobody's gotta raise a finger for it hardly. You can just, like, you can email them, you can text them, whatever, and they can just get it.
I certainly think it wouldn't help anybody to overcomplicate the whole
Yeah, no,
process.
just a simple FAQ sheet would be, it seems like that would be a perfect solution for it. Any questions would be clearly answered. If there were more questions, obviously, we would have to do more, but I mean, if it's a good FAQ sheet, it should answer almost every question.
We sent those out last year, didn't we?
Yeah.
We did, and I think if it's simple things, like you're building a greenhouse, okay, you don't, like, you don't have to go through a lot of rigmarole, just like, do I have to go to the planning board, do I have to go through that? No, and I think.
No,
I think
I
you
would
should-
never have any intention to.
Well, but,
Like,
It's for assessment
yeah, no,
purposes,
right,
Yeah.
not
let's say that,
inspection purposes.
like whatever, but just, it's simplify the process, like, so that you're doing something, you know what you're supposed to do if you do it or don't do it. But that's, I mean, I think that's a lot of what is to set up a situation where there's a process in place so that people can know what they're supposed to do, know where to go if they're not sure, they've got a project, what do I have to do, what permits, what notifications, what do I have to do? Here you go. I think I think maybe just an FAQ sheet is probably not enough. If it were enough, great. But I think as it is now, there are enough questions. There are questions coming to the board. There's questions coming to everybody. There's a lot of uncertainty as to what the process is, and it takes time to follow up. It takes time to try to answer questions. And this board, we're also limited as to what you call the board or you send an email. Hey, this is my project. This is what I want to do. Can you walk me through the process? Well, we can help you through the process some, but not completely.
Yeah.
Right?
Well,
and so this would help.
But if the process, sorry.
I also feel like, so like you, for instance, if you're gonna build anything, you're gonna contact them, and I feel like maybe you don't have to. So like, we're unnecessarily putting a burden on you to say, no, we don't, like, because you have to look up and make sure, like, but if you had a good FAQ sheet, like, and obviously there's, like, say you're putting up condos or something like that, like obviously, like, and people are gonna see that, like, it's not unobvious, like, this is not unobvious, it's not a carpet in your living room, you know, like this, everybody sees it, it's advertised, like, everybody knows about this, so I feel like in doing this, you're, like, people like us, you're overburdening us to come to you, and you are telling us no, like, don't need anything, like, so it's just like, it's an extra process that nobody needs.
You wouldn't
But-
have to come before the planning board.
No,
It
but
wasn't
we
a
would know
project
if we
that
had to,
required-
we would come.
That would be on the checklist and it would be very clearly spelled out.
So, I mean,
and it
if we
would
have
tell
the
you what you
checklist,
need.
why do we even need this to begin with?
Well, so I think in any
That's my
situation, regulation is not designed to keep people from doing things. It's to keep them doing things properly, right? And so that everybody is subject to the same regulation that the town has voted for already. And it just codifies that, it clarifies that, and it makes sure that if somebody does do something improperly, that we have the ability to follow up on that and address it.
Well, the selectmen board already has the ability to do that.
It's much more challenging under the circumstance that we have, and
Because
ideally, this would hopefully prevent those situations from happening in the first place, and prevent us from having to hire attorneys to go pursue a situation where somebody has improperly constructed something, and now people are complaining or there's an issue. Hopefully, it heads that off by making it a simpler process and clarifying what needs to be done.
If it's people you wanna stop from complaining, that will never end.
Let's
be clear.
We're not expecting that. Okay,
Yeah, so I mean, like,
I
your
do,
time's still being taken up,
okay,
and like,
but please, hold on. We have, other people have questions,
Sure.
and we really need to wrap up this
We
conversation.
have 3 more hearings tonight.
We have more to do tonight, and don't wanna keep everyone here all night. Okay, we had a,
Forrest question
Yeah, Forrest.
is, those bullet points, Forrest, refer back to, mostly to the town's subdivision regulations. So those are things that are already codified in our subdivision regs.
he was asking about the
bullet points on
bullet points
the
on-
last page.
on the last page of this.
Or the groundwater protection there are existing ordinances in the town, regulations or ordinances.
Okay. All right.
I just have one more quick one.
Okay.
If that's okay.
Yep.
Just in regards to number 7 on here, when it outlines the penalties for violations. And
Wait a
I know
second,
it's an
wait,
RSA
which one?
676, on the third page, number 7. So, I see that's an RSA 676, so, but it looks like, you know, people are subject to $275 fines for first offense and $550 for subsequent, and each day afterwards that is not remedied. And you're also, if you have the audacity to think that you're in the right and go against the town, you're subject to the town's attorney fees as well. Like,
That's the state statute. So,
Okay.
as I said when we started this, the select board, we've worked with a lot of people in a lot of situations, not being in compliance
yeah,
for different things, and in the, however many years I've been on the select board now, we've never fined somebody. It's,
sure, but it's the letter of the law, it's written in.
it is letter law,
as
but we
that,
have
so
discretion when to use fines.
I understand
But it's
that.
statewide.
That's a state regulation, I would say, yeah.
That the people are responsible for the town's attorney fees? That's statewide? They deal with town attorney fees?
That's the regulation, yeah.
Okay, so right or wrong, they're responsible. I mean, is there more to that statute than that, or is that just a clip of it?
Which one, 676-17, yeah, it's like 10 bullet points.
Okay, so I think maybe to take care of some of the vagueness of this document before it actually goes to the vote, like people can actually see that in there so they know what they're voting on.
You want all the bullet points for.
I think that's important.
Well, I mean, I'm gonna
You
push
could put
back
down,
and
like-
play and say, we could digest this for every citizen, or you could do what you just did, just said, oh, I see 67617, is that all of it? And you can Google it in, and people who are really curious and wanna learn about this can look at it.
Sure.
We're providing you the framework that we're working under.
Sure, but if you're gonna put it forward for the town to vote on, and this is the document on file.
Yep, and I'd say be an
I
informed
think
voter.
it's
Yep.
worth defining that for people, just to know what they're actually subject to.
Alright, okay, I think I'm gonna go ahead and close the public hearing. Alright, so let's talk next steps. I think we need to have a vote to, approve this as a warrant for the town ballot in March.
And then Emily includes it in the warrant that gets printed.
It's gonna be a question on the ballot.
Right.
Okay, alright, do we have any further discussion from the board?
You need a motion, right?
Yeah.
Does anyone have any comments though, first? Okay. Okay, so do I have a motion to approve the regulatory compliance ordinance as a warrant for the town ballot in March?
So,
I'll move it.
second.
Okay. Alright, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Alright, thank you everyone.
Thank you for the turnout. So the seats are filled. So it's not usually just
So
one.
you guys have the room.
seat.
Have a
Why don't I
great
just
night.
shut
Thank you.
up?
Thank you.
Thank you very much.